conversation for a moment to preview that we'll have a bit more of our conversation, and then we'll be going to the audience in the next couple of minutes so you can prepare your questions. I also feel I want to point out to the audience that there was a very telling moment in the writer's life that just passed before your eyes, which is that when Reza and I meet an author who sold 500,000 copies, we're pretty damn impressed. But when you've sold 500,000 copies, you're looking at 25 million as a price. Sam, I'd like to ask you how you can reconcile the statements, the generalizations that you feel comfortable in making about Islam and the Islamic world when we are confronted every night, hammered every night, by the reality that the problem in Iraq is the problem that within an Islamic nation there are Sunni Muslims fighting Shiite Muslims, and then there are Kurdish Muslims who are fighting both of them.
Right.
I mean, and in this I'm joining Reza in imploring you, is there not more diversity and pluralism in the Islamic world than perhaps you're giving it credit for?
Yeah, and nobody is suffering from the diversity in the Islamic world more than Muslims. I mean, we have in Iraq right now Shia and Sunni drilling holes into each other's brains with power tools in the suburbs of Baghdad. People, I would argue, who would not otherwise be engaged in this behavior but for their incompatible religious identities. I mean, they are caught in a blood feud which has all of the character of non-religious blood feuds. I mean, vendetta, it goes back for centuries. No doubt we stirred up this hornet's nest with our intrusion there, which I think has been hideous and utterly misconceived and misapplied, as I think we could probably all agree. But the reality is that if Iraq were all Sunni and there was no religious difference to be exploited by this crucible that we have placed these people in, I don't think you would have the same character of violence. They have defined, the Sunni especially, have defined the Shia as apostates, and across that gulf they have managed to completely dehumanize them. And this is now spiraling out of control. If you want to step back from it, the real issue is tribalism. The real issue is us-them thinking. The real issue is instrumental violence where you don't really care to kill the person who killed your son. You'll just kill one of his sons, or you'll just kill someone who's a part of the same group. That kind of breakdown of empathy, ultimately, is enabled massively by the fact that we have these competing religious identities in the world.
Your explanation of what's going on in Iraq does not in any way explain why the Kurds who are Sunni are killing and fighting other Sunni Kurds. It doesn't explain why in southern Iraq Shia militias, the Badr Brigade and the Mahdi Army, are killing each other. And it's, I think, again, a fundamental misunderstanding of why these groups are fighting each other. And it's as simple as simply
Let's
reading.
make it very, very simple then. The problem in the Middle East, imagine the problem in the Middle East without religion. I mean, just how good a thing is it that the Jews think that the creator of the universe promised them a certain strip of desert on the Mediterranean? I mean, how is that having any consequence in our world?
Let me ask you a question. Do you believe that the lack of a two-state solution and peace in Palestine is the result of the Jewish government believing that God gave them that land, and so they won't deny it?
And I have to join in here and say that the men and women who created the modern state of Israel were atheists who believed that if they stayed in Europe, the Jewish people would be murdered.
And they were right.
Turned out to be right. They were not religious Jews. They were condemned as apostates by the religious Jews.
And indeed, the ultra-Orthodox religious Jews don't believe in
but the Zionist project...
However,
actually, to misunderstand the intent of my remark, I mean, I think the history of anti-Semitism is the history of the religious vilification of Jews, which had the consequence of the virtual extermination of the Jews in Europe, which then gave a real justification to the state of Israel.
All I'm saying is it gets my blood up to hear that phrase, what if the Jews had not believed that this little strip of land had been given to them by God? as if to say this was a religious crusade by Jews. It was not.
I take those caveats, but what do you think would happen if we woke up tomorrow with the brilliant idea that we're just going to end the problem in the Middle East by giving the Jews British Columbia? Okay? Would they accept it?
That was tried. That was tried.
Right, actually, with Ghana.
Uganda.
Now,
well,
why not accept that?
Well, I have to concede this point to you, which is that in these very, and then I'm going to go to the audience, in these very discouraging times about where the prospects of peace in the Middle East are so dismal, if you play that thought game, what if the Jews were magically removed from Israel? Would that solve the problem of the Islamic world or the problem between the Islamic world and the West? And I think you'd have to conclude not at all.
It wouldn't. It would solve the problem between the Jews and their neighbors. I mean, the reason why they can't all live happily together on that land is because Judaism and Islam are hostile to one another on that sanctified ground. I mean, if the Jews left, they would not be attacked by the Canadians.
Actually, before 1948, of course, there were tens of thousands of Jews living alongside, their Arab neighbors without any problem at all. Again, to talk
and
about
throughout the Arab world.
Absolutely.
Without any problem at all I list the years of pogroms against Jews in all of those relevant countries.
In Palestine? I'm referring to Palestine, but
throughout the Arab world.
The point that I'm making is that by talking about this conflict as a religious conflict, as you are explicitly doing, you are essentially doing the same thing that the extremists are doing, and that is by overlaying this religious significance upon this that turns an earthly conflict into a cosmic battle, a battle for identity, a battle for who you are as a human being versus who the other is. Let's play a different thought game. Instead of let's remove the Jews from Israel, let's play the thought game in which we stop thinking about this as a Jewish-Muslim issue, because it's not, and start thinking about it as a Palestinian-Israeli issue, which it is. And those, certainly, there's the religious sort of connotations about it. There's no question. The most, ultra-conservative Jews and ultra-conservative Muslims in that region have a very cosmic conception of what is taking place there. But we cannot fall into the same trap by simply swallowing that conception of it and legitimizing it by sort of discussing it as though that truly is the problem. This is an inherent Muslim Jewish problem. It's not.
No, the problem is that so many people believe that it is. I mean, what I'm concerned with is the logical and behavioral consequences of beliefs. If you believe,
are you one of those people?
I'm going to have to bring our portion of the conversation to a close with apologies to Sam. I want to affirm what Reza said, from your lips to God's ear.